All right, guys, in this video, we're going to take a closer look at heredity and genetics, all right? And especially we're going to look at dihybrid crosses. So let's get into it. Now, before we jump into dihybrid crosses, let's look at monohybrid crosses one more time. So when we're talking about monohybrid, we're looking at one trait, all right? So here would be a good practice problem. In fruit flies, red eyes are dominant to white eyes. Let's cross a white-eyed fly with a homozygous dominant red-eyed fly. And then we'll cross two heterozygous red-eyed flies. We're going to need to draw Punnett squares for each cross, and we're going to need to come up with our genotype and our phenotype ratio. Okay? Now, when we're doing this, all right, we need to kind of examine the dominant versus recessive trait here. So we know red eyes are dominant over white eyes. So if we want to do a white-eyed fly, we know it's little r, and a homozygous dominant red eye would be big R, big R. I know it's two big R's, not a hybrid, because it's homozygous dominant. So if I wanted to do this cross, we would do big R, big R, little r, and hopefully you remember that when you do all dominant with all recessive, you get four hybrids, just like that. So I would have 100% genotype of big R, little r, and I would also have 100% red eyes because the dominant gene is going to show up. Now, if we did two heterozygous red-eyed flies, well, now we have big R, little r, right? Big R, little r, because we are heterozygous. So we're going to get a purebred dominant, two hybrids, and a purebred recessive. So now we have 3/4, so 75% red eye, 25% white-eyed. All right, there would be our phenotype. And for our genotype, we would have 25% purebred dominant. We'd have 50% hybrid with big R, little r, and we'd have 25% little r. So there we would go. Now, something interesting to think about is this question. Can you determine the genotype of a white-eyed fly just by looking at it? Well, the answer is, yeah, it has to be little r, because we know white is recessive. So to see a recessive trait, must be homozygous for that trait. Same question, but now for a red-eyed fly. Can you determine its genotype? Well, the answer is no. It could be big R, or could be a hybrid, right? Big R, little r. Either way, R is going to show up as the dominant red color, but we can't tell the genotype of a dominant trait just by looking at it. So the question then becomes, well, how do we figure that out? Well, do a test cross. All right, it's always that's always the answer. If you're not sure of the alleles, do a test cross. Now, if you wanted to do that test cross, if we want to figure out what we were doing, you would definitely want to do the unknown red-eyed fly with a white-eyed fly. We want to do the recessive because we absolutely know its genotype. So if the red-eyed fly was big R, what would it look like? Well, they're all going to have right, we don't know that one in our red-eyed fly. We would know this one. So if the red-eyed fly was big R, everything would be red, right? If this is the unknown, we have all hybrids. But we'd have 100% red eyes. If it was a hybrid, right, if our unknown was in fact this, or R, little r, well, then we would have a 50-50 because we would have big R, little, right? Everything on this side is going to be big R, little r, but everything over here will be that. So we'd have 50% white. So that's why we want to do our test cross. Now, that's monohybrids. We've done a lot of monohybrid crosses. You've practiced those. That's just a brief review. Let's look at dihybrid. Dihybrid crosses two traits at once. So in this example, we're going to do fur color and coat texture, and we'll say it's mice. Okay, so if I want to cross two heterozygotes, instead of 2 letters for their genotypes, I need 4, and their genotypes would be big B, little b, big R, little r. And this would be, we'll say, dad, right? And then the same thing for mom, because they're both heterozygotes. They're both hybrid for both traits, right? So when you see the word dihybrid, di means 2, so we're crossing 2 traits. Now we know their genotype for mom and dad. We got to find all their gametes, all right? Now gametes are haploid. This is obviously diploid, right? How do I know it's diploid? Well, it has 2 alleles for each trait. So this is diploid. So I know the gamete, each gamete will be 2 letters, right? 2 is half of 4. So you FOIL it. These 2 go together, all right? So I can have big B, big R. I could have big B, little r. And then these 2 and those 2 go together. So I'd have little b, big R, and I'd have little b, little r. So there would be the gametes for the parent. So we do that one, and then that one, and that one. You have to have 1 B and 1 R in each gamete. So we can have big B, big R. We can have big B, little r. We can have little b, big R, and we can have little b, little r. So that's my gametes. Now, because this is the same genotype for mom and dad, that's the gametes for both mom and dad. Now, we need to use a Punnett square that has a row, right, for each gamete. Now, in a monohybrid cross, we only have 2 squares on each side, so a total of 4 squares. Now we need 16 squares, all right? And we're going to layer, all right, and we're going to lay our gametes down the side just like normal. It's just now instead of 2, we're going to get 4 things. And then we're going to go in and we're going to write our letters. So this would be big B, big R, right? Big B, big R, little r. And I'm just going to combine them just like I did for a regular monohybrid cross. Big B, big R, little r, right? Just like that. So this comes down, that goes over. So 2 big B's, big R, little r. 2 big B's, little r, right? Then we got big, little, big, little, big, little, so on and so forth until I end up with a full set. So now that we have all this, right, now we can answer questions about both traits at the same time. So how many of the offspring would have a black, rough coat? All right, so for it to be black, we need to see at least 1 big B, and for rough, we need at least 1 big R. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. So the answer would be 9. All right. So the next question: how many offspring have black and smooth coat? Okay. Well, let me move my face out of the way here. Grab my eraser. Let me get rid of these. So the black gene for coat color is still going to be just 1 big B is all we need, but smooth coat, right? Smooth coat has to have 2 little r's. So we need big B and then 2 little r's. So there we go. 1, 2. Keep going through it up 3. That's it. So we have 3. All right. What if we asked about white and a rough coat? So now, let's grab our eraser again. Up. Yeah. So we're looking for a white coat, so we need 2 little b's, and a rough coat, so just 1 big R is all we need. So little b's, we're looking for little b's. Up there, we got 2 little b's and an R, so 1, 2, 3. All right. And the last question would say, how many offspring are white and smooth coats? So true recessive for both traits. Well, that means we need 2 little b's and 2 little r's. And hopefully, see if there's only one that is little for both. Now, this 9:3 to 3:1 ratio is always what we find when we do 2 dihybrid crosses. So we cross 2 hybrids. So remember, the parents were big B, big R, little r, big B, big R, little r. They're true hybrids, right, for both traits. We always get 9:3 to 3:1 as our ratio. And the ratio is, so 9 are dominant, 3 are dominant, recessive, dominant, and then these are both recessive. All right? So that's what we expect to see. So here it is color-coded. You can see there are the 9. Here's 3, 2, 1. 9 to 3, 3 to 1. And it's always going to fill that shape. Okay? There we go. There's our phenotypic ratio, 9 to 3 to 3:1. That's what we expect to see. All right? Now, here's something for you guys to do. All right? Pea plants, yellow seeds are dominant to green seeds. So yellow gets big Y, little y. So this would be a yellow hybrid. Round peas are dominant to wrinkled peas. So this would be a yellow round pod, but this is a hybrid genotype. Cross a plant that's heterozygous for both traits. So here's parent number 1 with a plant that's homozygous recessive for both traits. All right, so this is going to be little y, little r, right? Homozygous recessive. So that means all the recessive traits for all the genes. So here are our parents, big Y, big R, little r. All right, and go through, build your Punnett square. Now, the answer's on the next slide. Pause it, see if you can fill it out. Obviously, you're going to get a different ratio of 9 to 3 to 1. That won't be the same thing here. So pause it and work on it. When you come back, this is what you should get. Now, go through and ask yourself the same question. What's the ratio now? Where we have dominant, recessive, dominant, and then true recessive. All right, I'll do the first one for you. Dominant, So 4 are dominant. All right. Now, remember, this is yellow, and this is round. This would be green and wrinkled, based on that info on the last slide. So now go through and look for the one that's dominant recessive, so yellow and wrinkled. So we want, for this one, we would have big Y anything, little r, All right? So big Y, 2 little r's, big Y, 2 little r's, big Y, 2 little r's, big Y, 2 little r's. 4. Hope you're starting to see a pattern. All right, you guys finish it. If you have questions, okay, let me know. I'll be glad to give you a hand.